The ego gets a bad rep. When people think ego, they get ego misaligned with arrogance and conceit and things of that nature, right? The ego just gets a bad rep. And it's because the ego gets misused by um, by the person. It's similar to that of a weapon. Ooh, pardon me. It's similar to that of like a weapon. Like you'll hear people, oh, take all the guns away because of the violence. And it's not the gun, it's the person wielding the weapon that should be reprimanded. You know, you don't blame a sword for misconduct, but you blame the swordsman. And the ego, when used properly, is one of the best measures of defense. See, nobody has a problem with a sword, a gun, or a knife when it's used in defensive measures, but it's when it's used to assault, attack, or to be offensive, basically to start the violence process, right? But it's there as a defense, kind of like a martial art, right? You're not just supposed to, you're not supposed to, learn karate or kung fu or jiu-jitsu and go around and just attack people, right? It's supposed to be used as a measure of discipline for oneself, and then also so one can defend him or herself and their loved ones, or be a help to those who are defenseless. But when those um, crafts, those arts, are misused and they're used as a weapon, that's where they get misused. And ego is the same way. When people use their ego as a weapon, when you have people that that run around and they're like, oh, well, I did this, I accomplished that, I drive this, I live here, I work here, I do this, I, right? That's that's the conceit, that's the arrogance, that's the narcissistic trait that gets associated with ego, and they're not the same. What the ego actually is the ego is actually your ambassador. Your ego is the person that other people see first when they see you. When you pull up and you got on, your Gucci slip-ons and you hopping out of a Benz and you dress nice, people see that, right? And not saying that that's egotistical, right? But they're seeing that image first. But then when you start talking to them, communicating with them, they're meeting that ambassador, they're meeting that ego. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. And where ego gets misused is the fact that people don't necessarily understand what the application of ego can do to benefit their true authentic self. So if ego is your ambassador, ego is not only the first person that others meet, but it's also your way to gauge people for the first time. The ego is nothing more than a measure or a tool to gather information. When you first meet someone, you're gathering information. So if you're dating an ego, that's fine. That's fine. Show your ambassador, show your ego, and see how people react. If you're a guy and the first you meet someone and they, and you meet, someone that you're interested in, but they're not interested in you until they see your car. Your ego should automatically catch that and be able to give that information back to your authentic self so you can process how you want to proceed. If you show up and you want to be flashy, you want to show the car, you want to show all of that, and that's all somebody's interested in, then you know that they have no interest in meeting your true authentic self. So then you know how to operate. You know, from that point on, if that person is a resource to you, you have to operate in ego. That person is not worthy of meeting your authentic self, so you keep that person to yourself. For example, my ego, I've been told, is, I walk into a room and I can be, one of the smartest people in the room, the person that people want to gravitate to, a person that's going to come with the great ideas, because I'm an innovator, right? I'm an innovator. I come up with great ideas. I'm a good person to get things started. I'm very alpha in my ego is very alpha, right? My ego is very alpha, and alpha being, the beginning, the kickstarter, that person that's going to, that people are going to rally behind, that person that people don't mind being led by, right? So they might see me, when I'm freshly shaved and cleaned up, and I got a collar on, and I wear clothes that fit, that I'm comfortable in, but that might also, reveal that, hey, this guy has a decent bench press, right? Right? Because that's where I'm comfortable at, right? I like that, right? So when people meet my ambassador and they meet my ego, if they're interested in, hey, Darnell, let me pick your mind, let me pick your brain, you know, oh, well, I heard you were, the crypto guy, or, hey, when you worked at this financial institution, how did you guys do it there, right? So they want to get into my experience, which my ego is very much a product of my life experiences, right? They want to keep talking to the ambassador, but the person that's might stop it, interested in me. They might say, hey, what do you do for fun, right? And one of my other favorite questions that help to, to see whether or not you can step outside of ego is, hey, what books are you currently reading? Right? Right? See, the thing is, most people operate in ego, so they 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 want to align with others that they see. When you operate in ego, another thing you want to do is you want to fit in, right? Your true authentic self is just fine by itself, doesn't need to fit in with anyone because it recognizes that it's a piece of everything. Your true authentic self knows that it's not disconnected from source and that it's a part of everything, because we are all one, right? When it when you unpeel the onion, we're all one, right? We all come from the same um, divine creator, right? Um, Whether, regardless of what you believe, right? We all tie back to one thing, even if that one thing that we all tie back to is the fact that we're all on this earth realm right now. We all tie back to one thing, right? There's 7 degrees of separation between you and anyone or anything, but we all can at least tie back to the fact that, guess what, we're all in this earth realm, this earth experiment, this earth school, whatever. Might not even, some people, well, it's not earth, it's Nerm, it's Tiamat, it's whatever you call it. We're all on this rock in this experience together. Doesn't matter. And that's where the authentic self is aware of. The authentic self is always aware, but the authentic self needs information. The ego goes out and provides two major things, more than two, but it's just two major things that I'm going to tap on. The authentic self needs two things, and the ego does both. The authentic self requires information to be able to properly make decisions, and to be able to discern. And the authentic self needs protection. So the ego does two things. The ego first will gather information related to the environment to let the authentic self know if it's okay to come out and play. The ego also provides a layer of protection for the authentic self while it's gathering information to be able to discern whether or not it's safe to come out. Example, the ego, first date, ladies, you may get, you may get dolled up, whatever that looks like, for you, whether it's, your makeup, your hair, you know, nice outfit, your toes, your nails done, whatever, right? And you go out and you put, you know, that best foot forward, right? You may go out to a restaurant, you're using your silverware, you're drinking with your pinky up, just throwing some stuff out there, right? You're using complete sentences, you're not using profanity, you're properly using your napkin, things of that nature that may not be who you are when you're comfortable, right? But you go out and it's like you're you got your guards up, you got your fence up, because at the end of the day, I don't know this dude, right? You go out and you give just enough to see if it's worth continuing. That's ego, because you're gathering information behind a layer of protection. That's what the ego is. You're not going to go, to a fancy restaurant and, with, you know, with your hair pulled back and your sweats, in your sneakers, um, like it's like you're going to the gym or it's laundry day, right? Because that's probably closer to your authentic self, where you're most, comfortable. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people are comfortable dialed up. They're most comfortable, being dolled up. The most, some people are very comfortable in that. But when you sitting back and you chilling and you just being your authentic self, when you enjoying a hot beverage and you got a book, or you binge watching a show, or you, sitting back and you just chilling and it's you time, that's closer to your authentic self, and that's the person that you protect by all means, by all costs. So you put on the mask, you wear the mask, and the ego is that mask. Except for the ego is intelligent. And the problem comes when the ego is used to not when the ego is used for anything other than information gathering and protection. When the ego starts making decisions, you're out of alignment. You're out of alignment. When the ego is making decisions, you do things like, I just want to be seen today. I'm going to go get dressed up, wash the car, put on my 3-piece suit, and I'm going to the bar. I'm just trying to be seen. I just want to grab some numbers. I just want to see who I can meet. You don't even like people like that. So what we doing? You prefer your own company. You prefer a book and a warm chai tea. We'll be getting dressed up and going out to see who we can meet for. Is that authentic self or is that ego? Ooh, sounds like The Mask is speaking. It's kind of like Jim Carrey, right? In that movie, The Mask. Is it the guy or is it the mask? Mask on, the ego's talking, and the ego's, trying to trying to trying to run the show. And that's where you start posting pictures for likes, and you start saying things out your mouth just to get attention. When you start doing things to better your position from a social standpoint, or when you start doing things to be seen and to be heard, that's that ego. That's that ambassador that's there for that purpose, to be seen, to be heard, to gather information, to interact and gather information, and then to bring it back to the authentic self for discernment. But in that it's to protect the authentic self. You know, when that when the ego starts making decisions, it's information that's being gathered, and it's not protecting the authentic self, but it's controlling the authentic self. It's the guy that's with the beautiful woman that he won't let wear leggings out in public without giving her a fit. It's the lady that won't let her guy wear the gray sweatpants out in the fall because she doesn't want other women, scoping out her package, right? No, no, it's that. It's that. What you wearing that for? It's that, what my people do when you get dressed up and you about to head out. Where are you going? That's ego, as opposed to just being like, yo, you look good. Have a good time. If they want to share, they'll share, right? It's that. It's controlling. It's manipulating, right? When the ego doesn't understand how to make decisions because it doesn't have the ability to discern. The ego is just gathering information. It's just interacting, right? It's protect. Its job is to protect the authentic self, but it can. And I don't believe necessarily in overprotection, but I do believe in controlling and manipulating, which prevents controlling and manipulation prevents the opportunity for opportunity. When you control the situation or you manipulate something, it's hiding information or keeping people from being presented with an opportunity to decide. No good. That's no good. The ego does that because there's a line between protection and controlling that I think we all could, work on, especially if you're in a relationship or if you're, you know, a parent, right? There's a line between protection and controlling, right? You got to let your people live. Let people experience their own journey. You don't want to see nobody get hurt. And that's the thing. The ego doesn't want to see the authentic self get hurt. That's why it's there, right? And when people say, "Oh, I don't care," they're operating out of ego because the authentic self is always gonna care. The authentic self always cares because it recognizes that we're all one, we're all connected, right? So it's always gonna care. But the authentic self recognizes that it can care without being concerned, right? So that's something to unpack later. The ego will cut things off quick because it's always in fight or flight because it's supposed to be as a part of the protection mechanism for the authentic self. It has to be in fight or flight because the authentic self can't get compromised. The authentic self should not ever be compromised or ever be hurt, right? The ego is there to protect it. Up, walls up. Gotta put the wall of protection up. Gotta shield myself here, right? That's what the ego is there for. That's why the ambassador, when you be like, Dag, I've been seeing this person for a couple months, man. I think they great people. But then you start spending more time with them, you start circulating more time with them, and you realize, hey, that's not who I thought they were. Yeah, that's because their ego might be better than their authentic self. The ego is the facade, the mask that they put on to rope you in, and their true authentic self is an energy vampire. Because the authentic self has been corrupted, right? Then on the flip side, somebody could be a hard-nosed, I don't want to have nothing to do with you type of person because the ego is acting out the trauma responses, right? But then when you get to know that person, you're like, man, they actually good people. Then when they feel comfortable enough to start talking and see that they can be trusted in being vulnerable, you start seeing more of their authentic self, and you just recognize, man, they just hurt. They just hurt. When you got two people dating or coexisting out of ego without unpacking who they truly are authentically, they're living a facade, you know. But when you can start unpeeling and seeing a person at their true authentic self, and when you're able to be your true authentic self is your favorite person to be. Who is your Who are you at your favorite moment, at your favorite place to be? Who are you, at your best? What's your favorite, that thing that makes your inner child just go, ee, right? It could be, going into Legoland, or it could be going into a jewelry store, or it could be, you know, driving your car as fast as you can on a controlled, track type of environment. It could be in the gym. It could be, I don't know, in the bathtub with some Mozart on, right? What's your favorite thing to do? I mean, heck, most people that are incarnated here in this realm only came for the pizza anyway. So if your favorite thing to do is to throw on some gray sweats and a tight t-shirt and go get a slice of thin pizza, that's you. Summarizing it all, the ego is a good thing until it starts taking on duties that it was never meant to do. The ego is great for interaction and gathering information. The ego is a great protector. What the ego is not great at is discernment and decision making. When you're in your ego, don't try when you're out meeting so like a lot of people would be like, oh, the vibe didn't feel right. The vibe didn't feel right. You let your ego gauge vibe. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The ego properly partnered with intuition, the intuition is going to send a signal to the ego that says, hey, ratchet up your protection a little bit. That's what's going on there. The intuition is going to send a signal to the ego that's going to say, hey, ratchet up the protection a little bit because this don't feel right. Right? That's intuition. But some people are operating so much out of ego that they can't hear that intuition. They listen more so to thoughts that aren't even theirs, as opposed to listening to the intuition. The intuition is your gut feeling, and those thoughts come from your logic house, where that can be compromised at any point, by the environment. Because most of our thoughts aren't even our thoughts anyway. Explain to me why you can be sitting on the porch, chilling, drinking a cup of coffee, and next thing you know, you thinking about somebody that used to bully you in high school. What that got to do with this coffee? This coffee good. Why am I thinking about the dude that used to steal my lunch money that I cracked upside the head with the book? Why? Why? Right? So your thoughts have to be in control. Your ego can help with that, because your ego can be that protective unit that can stop and be like, yeah, but that ain't got nothing to do with this nature that I'm setting in right now. Ain't got nothing to do with this coffee. The ego's in the moment, you know? So use your ego to gather information. Use your ego to protect your authentic self. The ego should never be used to discern or to make decisions. If you're out making decisions when you're in your ego state, in your ambassador state, you should stop. Give yourself, that's why when you go to a dealership to buy a car and you haven't done any research, you never buy when you're there. Go there and gather information and come back and make a decision, because there's a good chance you're going to get got. You're gonna get got. Car, furniture, clothes. If you don't do your authentic self wants to do that research. Your authentic self wants as much information as possible before it decides. You need information for discernment. Ego is going on the car lot and, dude, I'm gonna look fire behind the wheel of this thing. You sign the paperwork and you start thinking about it, and you're like, man, the payment ain't number $800. Uh-oh. You ain't get that insurance bill, that first insurance bill. You don't know what the maintenance on this thing gonna look like. And what do you mean this thing run on 93 octane? Man, that's almost $5 a clip. Yeah, you didn't really think about all of that, right? So now, because you made a decision out of ego, you're driving a burden as opposed to something you're actually going to enjoy each time you get in there. See? Now let's take that back. Let's go. Hey, you got 30 days. Let's go ahead and take that back. Thanks. Right? And then you didn't go, and then you probably got it financed through the dealership. They probably suckered you for a down payment that goes in their pocket. That goes in their pocket. That's something else. You never put a down payment down when you're financing with the dealership. You don't do that, right? You go to your bank, you get your check, and then you walk in with your money already. Don't even talk finances. Why you talking loans and finance stuff with people in a dealership? Those are sales folks. So you're out of alignment because you're working an ego. Well, what I got to do to walk out with the keys today? That's why sometimes they'll let you drive home with the thing first before they even before you even sign anything. They run your credit to make sure you can get approved for one of their loans. Take it home for the night. Think about it, because they feeding your ego. You can't you you're not able to discern and make a proper decision when you're operating in ego. Use your ego to interact and gather information, to relay that information back or to filter it through your intuition and then to your authentic self, and use your ego to protect your authentic self so you don't get hurt. You know, you put up that wall that's either going to weed people out automatically, or it's going to pull people in so much that your intuition is going to trigger and be like, red flag, you know. So use your ego to that degree and don't live in it. Use it for what it is. It's a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism. Now, when you walk in and your intuition starts yelling louder and giving information to the ego, because the ego again is fight or flight. If the intuition starts yelling and the ego is like, well, let's just stay, let's just see what we can do. You're operating an ego. The intuition is tied closer to the authentic self. Think of it like layers. Like you got your first wall, that's your ego. You got your second wall, that's your intuition. Because information has to filter in through the ego to hit the intuition. You don't walk out with your intuition first, right? No, you got to gather information again. Your intuition is going to give you the gut feel, which your gut feel is a reaction, to the information that is received. So your ego is your proactive measure. It's that first line of defense. The information comes in and the intuition is that next layer before it gets to your authentic self, before you can get to that place of discernment and decision making. The information may come in through the ego, and then the intuition may say red flag, red flag. I'm picking up something. Ego, I'm picking up something. Pay attention to X, Y, and Z. Bang. That's when you clicking right there. When you clicking like that, and you got your ego and your intuition working, that's where your authentic self can sit back with the popcorn and just like, ha ha, my team got me covered. I am covered. Mm, that's that armor right there. That's that armor. I'm telling you, that's that armor. That ego going out there being that ambassador. That intuition said, I don't trust Rick. I don't trust Rick. Watch yourself when you're around Rick. Hey, ego, be quiet. Listen more when you're around Rick. You ever just been around somebody and you just wanted to be quiet and just listen? Sometimes it's because you think you can learn something from them, but other times it's, man, this dude talking in circles. Something ain't right with him. I don't trust him. Or you get around Susie and you be like, man, huh, Susie just listening. Man, let me just talk to Susie a little bit. Let me get to know something about Susie. I want to get to know Susie, right? Now I don't know ego. I'm trying to hook up with her or nothing, but Susie feel like she can be part of the Vibe tribe. Let me connect with Susie. Then you start talking to Susie and you realize that, hey, y'all been reading the same book. Oh, okay, 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 cool, right? So the ego can relay that information back to the intuition. The intuition can be like, cool, let's open up a little bit, right? Let's stay let's stay behind the ego, but let's open up just a little bit. Let's share, let's share a little bit more. You know, it's a difference between revealing and sharing, right? When you've only revealed things that no one can use to hurt you, you share things that are personal to you that can come back later and can be brought up in conversation, um, that make you vulnerable. Let's say that you reveal things which you don't mind if the world knows, right? But you share things that make you more vulnerable. Ooh, that's another piece. All right, so had to put this in video because I'm on this needs to be a book. I'm gonna write some manuscript around this, get some details in. This feels like a good 50-page read. Um, so yeah, ego, first line of defense, interaction and information gathering, protection, not for discernment or decision making.